Welcome, everyone. I'd like to we get started. My name's Ian McLean. I'm President and CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you all to the third and final candidate forum in advance of Monday's municipal elections. The Greater KW Chamber appreciates each of these candidates for Regional Council for Kitchener, as well as the mayoral candidates for Kitchener, for taking time out of their busy schedule to come and participate in this event. The Greater KW Chamber has 1,800 members and hundreds of volunteers, of which many of the, or all of the questions have been developed through our policy committees so that we can identify issues of importance to both the community as well as the business community more broadly. I want to take a moment just to thank our friends at 570 News, and in particular Jeff Pickle from the news department. Jeff has not only done these three candidate forums, but also our provincial candidate forums in Waterloo and Kitchener-Conestoga in the provincial election. We appreciate his involvement and active participation in moderating these sessions. I do want to say that we've had these sessions will be yesterday's debate or forum and today's will be posted online. We will be sending this out to all of our members and ask everyone to get informed and make sure you get out and vote on Monday. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Jeff for the rules and regulations and then try and get through our questions for today. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ian. And he's correct in saying I have done a lot of these over the last couple of months, and the biggest innovation we've had is we've put in a chair back here, so in between questions I can sit down. That's something new that we've put in, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you for everyone for attending and for being here at the Victoria Park Pavilion. As mentioned, my name is Jeff Pickle. I work with 570 News. I will be moderating today's forum. This is the final of three candidate debates organized by the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce in advance of the election on Monday, October 22nd. A debate for the regional chair was held October 3rd, and a similar event was held yesterday for the City of Waterloo regional council candidates and mayor candidates at Rim Park. As Ian mentioned, those will be available online for anyone who would like to view those. For today's forum, the format will be 1 minute for introductory remarks from each candidate. That will be followed by questions identified by the Chamber of Commerce through their advisory committees. Please note that in the interest in covering as many issues as possible, and with the number of candidates on stage here, we're not going to have any rebuttals given after, and each candidate will be limited to about 2 minutes to answer each question. I'll be timing. And when you go over the 2 minutes, I'll try to very gently interject and let you know that we'll have to move on. So 2 minutes per answer, 1 minute for introductory remark. I'll also note off the top that candidate Fazia Mazur was unable to attend. She teaches during this time, so was unable to get away from her teaching obligations. Otherwise would like to be here, but could not for those reasons. So we are, the first question and answer, when we get to that aspect, will be first answered by Barry Verbanovic, but in the start of the introductory statements, again with 1 minute, we begin with Nareen Sikram.
All right. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nareen Sikram, so I think it is important for you to at least get to know me a little bit. I've been in this community for over 25 years. I work in social services. So for me, this election is not about who has the most experience in City Hall. This election is about who has the drive, the passion, and the track record to achieve results. If you look at my track record, you can Google my name. It is easy these days. You will realize that I've championed every project I've initiated and being part of. There's a reason why I've received over 200 awards for my unique work. And in fact, I've been one of the greatest advocates in this region. I do not like unethical practices. That's one of the reasons when elected officials were presenting Diamond Jubilee medals to themselves, like Ken Sealing, former mayors and so on, I advocated for the privilege to bestow the Diamond Jubilee medal and became the only person in Canadian history to bestow the Diamond Jubilee medal to the regular citizen. That's one of the reasons on my platform you'll see it says people first. So that's what I'm all about. I have a track record. That's what the difference is. I'm ready to put all the pieces together to help to move this city forward. Thank you. Check out my website, narainsokram.com.
Thank you. And up next, mayoral candidate Barry Verbanovic.
Hi, I'm Barry Verbanovic, and 4 years ago you gave me the honor of serving our community as mayor of Kitchener. And at that time I ran on a platform of strong neighborhoods, a growing economy, and a better Kitchener. And over the last 4 years, working together with all of you and the rest of the community, we've been able to achieve a lot of the various items that we had on the agenda over these past 4 years to make our community an even better community to live in. The reality is the work isn't done, that if we want to see our community continue to move forward with balanced continued growth and world-class innovation, it's important that we continue to focus on both a small town feel and the need to promote a caring community. And I believe that I have both the leadership skills, the strong experience, and the proven success to continue leading our community over the next 4 years. I ask for your support on October 22nd. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next it will be Myron Steinman.
Thank you, Mike Bickle, engaged citizens and fellow candidates. My name is Myron Daniel Steinman. On your ballot, you will see my name as under Mayor of Kitchener, Myron Steinman. Today is Thursday, October 18th, 2018. There are 3 days left in this campaign. I always start by acknowledging we are guests of this land. I do have a web page that is still under construction, www.myrondanielsteinman.weebly.com. That's WEEBLY.com. Thank you. On the ballot, you will also see Barry Ramovic, Narayan Sukran, and Eric Melek. Mayor of Kitchener. Finally, I would like to add, and you can quote me on this, in conclusion, I have to set the microphone. This is my prop. Life is not a game, but there are rules we play by. Thank you.
Next to speak will be Yuri Merrick.
Good afternoon. My name is Yuri Marek. I am new to politics here in Kitchener, and definitely I'm privileged to have some voice and talk to you about talk to you and for next 4 years to change something what everybody is experiencing and what everybody is or has to pay and will pay for. I believe that many of those things that from 1994 has been changed since bylaw, stormwater, LRT, all those things eventually got to be paid because especially new government here in Ontario will ask and obviously will go through austerity and eventually all those bills will come to our pockets. What I'd like to do is to introduce, and if I get a chance to be mayor of Kitchener, obviously the idea that obviously I'm against amalgamation. I'd like to go back to before 1994. That means the Kitchener would have own budget, especially as the 21st largest municipality in Canada, and especially those who are contributing most to this Waterloo region. Obviously, we are now running everything as through 4 chairs in Waterloo region, but I believe there is a chance, especially with Cambridge, to go back and to go to idea that everybody should be accountable and pay what we spend. That means don't spend any more than we've got. Thank you very much for your vote and attention, and especially if we had no chance for last vote, as we will not, then I'd say please either status quo or change. It's very simple. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. For the mayoral candidates, we'll now begin with opening statements from our regional council candidates, and that will begin with Jeff Lorenz.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Jeff, and thanks to Chamber for being able to provide us with this forum today. I don't really think it'll be a debate. I haven't seen one around for a while, but I think it's great that we have the opportunity to speak to people one last time before the vote. So I've been your municipal representative for 30 years, 22 years at the City of Kitchener, and 8 years at the Regional Waterloo representing Kitchener. I've been a member of the Chamber for 30 years. I've also owned my own small business for the last 18 years. I'm one of the people that has brought opportunity and prosperity to the region. I take a lot of pride in that. And I'd like to continue to do that for the next 4 years. So hopefully with your support, that'll happen. To see my complete platform, jefflawrence.ca. Thank you.
Okay, next to speak will be Ted Martin.
Hi. I've worked in the local high-tech community for many years as a software developer, technical communicator, team leader, manager, and continuous improvement champion. I believe this kind of commitment to critical thinking and evidence-based decision-making, along with my terms representing Kitchener on the school board and my years coaching youth sports, make me an ideal fit for regional council. The region is at a crossroads. We're growing rapidly and about to become a really big city. If we were a startup, we'd be on the verge of our IPO. If we do this properly, if we do this intentionally, seeking investment that will build the kind of region we want, we can attract businesses and jobs and gain cultural and recreational opportunities, an even more vibrant arts scene, and world-class healthcare and social services while maintaining our hometown feel, our sense of community, our sense of belonging. But like that startup about to go public, we need new people to help us achieve those goals. Please support me on October 22nd to be one of those new people.
Thank you. Next candidate will be Michael Harris.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Harris, and I'm running for Regional Councillor within Kitchener. I'd like to first off thank Ian, Art, and the Chamber for putting on this important discussion. I recently had the pleasure of serving our community at the provincial level for 2 terms and would like to bring that experience to our regional council table. As a strong advocate for the region, I had the pleasure of working on important issues like roundabout safety, improving emergency response times, critical infrastructure projects like Highway 7 and the expanded two-way all-day go. I fought for fairness for local construction companies and their workers who are shut out of bidding and working on regional infrastructure paid by you, the taxpayer. I helped introduce legislation that would give new tools to law enforcement to help combat the opioid crisis that takes an average of 2 Ontarians each day. And finally, I pushed government to live within its means and provide value for taxpayers while making sound decisions based on evidence, not political polls. If elected on October 22nd, you have my commitment to continue working hard on your behalf. For any more information, please visit votemichaelharris.ca. Thank you.
Next to speak will be Tom Galloway.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff, and thanks to the Chamber for sponsoring this forum this afternoon. With the retirement of Ken Sealing, Regional Council is at a pivotal point. The new regional chair will need a strong, experienced council. I've been fortunate to have represented Kitchener on Regional Council and will bring to the table the knowledge of how to get things done collaboratively with my fellow councillors from across the region. The region is responsible for many services and programs. However, the 3 areas of emphasis for the next term should be affordable housing, active transportation, and the integration of conventional and rapid transit. Our community is growing, and we have an award-winning strategic growth plan that has as its pillars Countryside Line and rapid transit. We are a prosperous community attracting new investment to provide good-paying jobs. And we have a vibrant arts and culture community that adds to our quality of life and attracts business investment. We need to continue to support all these efforts. And yes, we must maintain our AAA credit rating that only a very few municipalities in Ontario can enjoy. I ask for your support on October 22nd, tomgalloway.ca. Thank you.
Speaking next will be Carrie Williams.
Hello, and thank you for having me. My name is Carrie Williams. I was born in Kitchener, educated in Waterloo, and in my 33 years, I've come to appreciate where this community has been and where it is going. Here are some of the things I value: smart growth, new ideas, connecting our region. I believe our heritage is important, but so is development and our collective well-being. I think what this region needs is to continue to build on our past successes and the bold initiatives past councils have undertaken, but we need to keep pushing for progress in a balanced and responsible way. I don't want to change the way we do taxes, but I do want better outcomes for our community and for our most vulnerable citizens. We have room to improve when it comes to alleviating poverty in the region, increasing the number of affordable housing units, infrastructure, and attracting and growing businesses. We need development, but we need to do it in a way that preserves our values, our history, our wealth, and our environment. I am a young professional mother with a master's degree in political science, and I have 10 years of research experience. I have a perspective that is needed in our community, and I will make a valuable contribution to council if elected. Thank you again. Please check out my website, www.carriewilliams.com.
Next to speak will be Elizabeth Clark.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for being here today. During my term on council, the region's enhanced our homelessness services and added to our affordable housing stock. We've increased and protected our funding of dental and vision care for our lowest income residents. We've expanded public transit and frozen fare increases, and we've created new childcare spaces and eliminated our childcare subsidy wait list. We've protected our green belt. We've helped residents and businesses reduce energy use and adopt more sustainable sources of energy. We've cut the amount of waste going to our landfill by more than 50%. We've met our previous greenhouse gas emissions reduction target, and we've approved an ambitious new target. We've created a new economic development corporation which has attracted $74 million in new business investment already. We've worked with the province to gain a commitment to bring two-way all-day GO service to the region by 2024 and high-speed rail by 2025. And we've done all this while keeping property tax increases below 3% per year and maintaining a AAA Moody's credit rating. We've accomplished a lot, and I'm proud of the role I played, but there remains much to be done. I look forward to discussing some of my ideas over the next couple of hours. Thanks again.
And finally, Tom Hiller.
Thank you. I'm Tom Hiller. The regional tier has been in place for 45 years, yet many constituents are still unclear how things mesh. The interface needs updating, and representative change has been more than slow. We're being challenged in areas of traditional and social infrastructure, development, and the environment. Planning and taxes are always an issue. Will Queen's Park support our efforts? What about the economy? We have to be better now. We need to be smart and accountable, productive, inclusive, and efficient. We're being scrutinized. The same old won't do. Change could be thrust upon us. Regardless, I have the professional background to help full-time. I'm an analytical centrist, willing to collaborate to get things done. Across tiers, we need unity of purpose and coordination, less divisiveness and silo thinking. A refreshed perspective can catalyze positive results.
Okay, thank you, candidates. We'll now get into the question and answer portion of tonight. And I think just to keep things, because we are doing the mayoral candidates and the regional council candidates here, we'll allow all mayoral candidates to answer and then move into the regional council candidates, just so everyone in the audience is familiar and knows who's running for what and who's competing against who. So we'll begin the answers to the first question with Barry. We'll run through the mayoral candidates, finishing with Narayan, and then we'll begin with regional. Does that make sense? Did I make that simple? Okay, trying to. As long as you guys know what's going on. The first question is as follows. What are your priorities for economic development in Waterloo Region, and do you support the Waterloo Region Economic Development Corporation's effort to bring new investment to the region? Again, we'll begin with mayoral candidate Barry Verbanovic.
Well, thanks very much, Jeff, for the question. And as I said earlier, a growing economy was a big part of my platform last year, or 4 years ago rather, and put a great deal of priority on that, both in terms of growing the new economy in the tech and innovation sectors, but also ensuring that we grow the economy in some of the traditional sectors like manufacturing in our community. And so, as I look forward to the next term, there would be a continued focus on ensuring we grow a diverse economy, because I think it's extremely important that we provide job opportunities for people across all sectors, and that has been one of the strengths of this region. 4 years ago, we didn't have the Waterloo Region Economic Development Corporation, and brought that about a couple of years ago, and have seen great success in terms of the work it has been able to do, both in terms of attracting new companies and new jobs to this region, as well as supporting companies in the region in terms of their international trade. I've been a big proponent of that and would continue to be going forward, as well as the notion of the Toronto-Waterloo Region Innovation Corridor, which is something that both John Tory and I, together with my colleagues Mayors Jaworski and Craig, launched a couple of years ago. So I think as we go forward, it's going to be important that we continue to focus on the new economy, because that's where a lot of the jobs are, and recognize that there are shifts happening in manufacturing. And so advanced manufacturing is going to be key, and it'll be important for us to partner with folks like Conestoga College to make sure that our people in the community that are in manufacturing can actually develop the skill sets for some of those new advanced manufacturing jobs. The last point that I would make is really focused around small business. More and more people are actually seeing that as a viable alternative for them in terms of their career path. And it's going to be important that we continue to support the Waterloo Region Small Business Center and the literally thousands of people that they work with in order to see additional jobs being created.
Okay, thank you. We'll now go next to mayoral candidate Myron Steinman.
Yes, thank you. I am not familiar with the Waterloo Region Economic Corporation. I do know that the lower tier of municipal government can also do economic development. I do know that we have a partnership with the University of Toronto with a pharmacy school. We have a partnership with McMaster University with a medical school. We have a partnership with Wilfrid Laurier with downtown Kitchener with a social work school. We have a very thriving tech industry, and we may have the head office of Google in Canada. I don't know if that's a fact, but it may be in Kitchener. So we have a thriving high-tech industry, and that is very important. There is significant people, like Barry said, the manufacturing sector is going to change. I used to drink my orange juice out of 2-liter bottles, not bottles, plastic containers. Now they are 1.75. So tech feels fine with investing money to make smaller bottles and have it the same price. But it takes less jobs to make those. So I am concerned with automation, that there are going to be less jobs in the manufacturing sector. So I believe the nonprofit sector can be one area to develop jobs for people who can't compete in the competitive marketplace. I have more to say, but that's all I have to say now.
Thank you. Now to Yuri Merrick.
Thank you. My ancestors came here about 100 years ago, and actually they built first brewery in Waterloo. I believe that what we need is not only to have brains, universities, but also motivation for business. For business, I assume that everybody is interested here. That's why you are here. The business in this regard needs good environment, taxes, and motivation. Motivation that you don't need to go to Toronto, Mississauga, or elsewhere, but bring and hold business here. I heard that property taxes went up to 3%. I don't know, my math, or at least university education, doesn't allow me to accept that number, because at the same location, 1994, we paid $1,300. Today, we are paying $4,500. The math doesn't go that way. But what I'm trying to say, that many people basically came to this city, to municipality, and I am concerned about municipality, not only, but my son was born here 22 years ago. He finished University of Waterloo, or is finishing, and now actually he's in the US. The reason is very simple. To say that somebody says, oh, it's paid on TV, Well, it's not. He's getting much better paid in the US. Obviously, I'd like to have him here, but I don't, because he says there is no reason to be here. I don't know how to put him back. I like to bring him, obviously, he's in computers. He's one of the best students there. He's got actually Governor's General reward and prize. But on the other side, if you'd like to have the business here, you have to also not only property taxes, but you have to build a business. I don't believe, obviously, in marijuana business. I'd like to get back, as 20 years ago, it was manufacturing, and all those people who are every day coming to Kitchener on 401, and then in the morning going back to elsewhere, it seems to me almost hypocrisy. As I said, I'm hypocritical, because if our property taxes are going up, and all those people are going to Toronto, and they are spending 2.5 hours on radio in a car, and then coming back through the dreadful highway, my question is, why cannot we have really fast railway? That could be already for those 2.5 billion, actually 4 billion in total servicing, already building. And that everything is only because everybody is building everything here because they just built, but nobody talks about concept. Probably it's time to stop and reconsider everything, including even the region, because all the money is going to region. Whatever you would like to build, region says, Kitchener cannot do anything.
Okay,
we cannot
thank you.
do anything in this city. It's got to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuri. And we'll now finish with the mayoral candidates with Narayan Sukram.
All right, so first, I think it is crucial for us to assist the small businesses to sustain their business. My job as a job developer, I work with small businesses. And so it's not only about assisting a business to put up a building, and there you go, put a couple of machines, and there you go. It has a lot to do with soft skills as well, too. Very crucial. Customer service, very crucial. We need to make sure we teach small businesses all of these pieces, and I can do that well. I'm the only person in North America to receive an international honor for customer service. I was speaking with a small business owner who came to this country 5 months ago. He wants to open up a business locally here. He has no idea how to put together a job description. So there are a lot of pieces that we need to do to help these small businesses grow. Also, me working social services, I understand opportunities that are available to them. For example, how many of you know that we do have the Canada Ontario Job Grant? Businesses are not aware of these pieces, so we need to teach them these pieces. When it comes to bringing new businesses in our area, you don't just bring in any business for the sake of bringing in business and say, oh, we bring in tech business and so on, because we need more than tech businesses in this region. And so we have to understand the skills that we already have here. Once we understand that need, that's when we need to negotiate and bring in the right kind of business in here. So what I'm trying to say is that we need to have a good mix. Tech is great and something we all should be proud of, but at the same time, there are people who are not very tech savvy. I'm a social worker, for example. I coach people how to be, how they can maximize their own potential. So we need to make sure we have a broad, if we want to bring in business here, we need to have bring a very good mix to make sure that we are really providing opportunities for basically everybody and not necessarily one set of skills. And I think that's where we are lacking. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to the mayoral candidates. We'll now get into the questions, the same question for the regional council candidates. I'll just say it again so everyone remembers where we started. What are your priorities for economic development in Waterloo region, and do you support the Waterloo Economic Development Corporation's efforts to bring new investment to the region? We will begin with Jeff Lorenz.
Thank you, Jeff Pickle. So Barry summed it up quite nicely and hit on a lot of points that I think were very important. I just want to say, when I was back on Kitchener Council, I was part of bringing the investing $110 million into our downtown core. We brought in Communitech. We started Communitech, I should say. We brought in the universities. And I think that was a really good beginning of trying to jumpstart our economy. We have a diverse economy, and I think one of the biggest strengths we have in our economy, besides the insurance industry, is manufacturing. It still is very powerful and a great employer in our region. I supported the Economic Development Corporation. All the municipalities, all the 7 municipalities supported it as well. I think what used to happen was we were all competing against each other. So if a manufacturer or a company wanted to come into Cambridge, Kitchener would like to get it, so would Waterloo. And I think what has really happened is, in conjunction with both of the chambers, we've been able to work together as a team under the leadership of Tony Lamontier. He's doing a great job. He used to work for the province of Ontario. And we're realizing it's not us against the other municipality, it's us against the world. So we've really made some big changes. The municipalities still have small economic departments, economic development departments that work with small businesses and do all that stuff. But really, the Economic Development Corporation is one that is focused on Canada and national-wide businesses, attracting them to our community. And one of the things that I want to really stress is I think over the next 4 years, you may be surprised what happens out at our airport. It's been the best kept secret in not only this province, but in Canada and across the world. So we've had a lot of interest. We've had a lot of opportunities to discuss different things with different people. And I'm hoping in 2019, you're going to see some big things happening in our airport.
Okay, thank you. We'll now have Ted Martin.
Thank you. One of the priorities for economic development is to build a region where people want to live and where people want to work, a place where people want to invest their money and start their businesses. And I think with our economy growing, with our education sector, with our universities and the college, we are building that kind of place. Our region is expected to grow to about 750,000 people in the next couple of decades. So to support that, we need a diverse economy. And I think that the Economic Development Corporation is an ideal way to promote that economic diversity, growing the tech sector, but also supporting our manufacturing and service sectors. And we also need to use the Tourism Marketing Corporation to promote job-creating tourism, which can also be a way to diversify our economy. We need to support initiatives that bring economic opportunity to the region, but we need to evaluate these with a long-term lens, considering their social and environmental impacts as well as their fiscal impacts. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to speak will be Michael Harris.
Well, thanks. Excellent question. Look, for a long time, our community or region has been operating within 7 different economic development corporations, and finally we've got an entity here in the region where we're speaking from one particular voice. 600,000 people now represented by one economic development corporation. We're no longer competing against the Brantfords and the Londons and the Miltons of the world. We're now competing globally for jobs and business investments right across our globe, Silicon Valley, Detroit, United States. And so we need to, cater and customize exactly, the land and everything else that some of these job creators are in fact looking for. We have all of the ingredients for a successful economy here in our region. We have a world-class healthcare, world-class educational facilities, a good, strong, healthy workforce available. Again, all of the amenities that employers, in fact, are looking for to set up shop and create the right conditions. It is also important that the Economic Development Corporation, and again, I need to congratulate Tony LaMattina and his team on really being aggressive for new investment, but also keeping those good-paying jobs that we currently have here in our region. As mentioned, we are still a hotbed for traditional manufacturing, and these are jobs that our economy relies on. It's also important for this particular organization to be arm's length from the politicians. I must commend the region for going with a governance structure outside of the political realm, where there's no politicians, in fact, involved on the governance. And so, they can collectively work and put the region ahead of individual municipalities' priorities. Wherever the best land and the best opportunity that reflects the employer, that's what we'll go after. I definitely think, again, it's important that the economic development focuses on and pushes government to live within their means and create the right conditions for job growth. Thanks.
Next to speak is Tom Galloway.
Thanks, Jeff. I want to speak to this on a number of different levels, and starting off with the Waterloo Region Economic Development Corporation. They're the organization that deals on the international stage. They promote us internationally. They promote Waterloo Region nationally. And it's an organization that largely gets its funding from the region, and it's something that we need to continue to promote, we need to continue to support, and possibly increase their activity level. At the provincial level, there's a few things I want to talk about. The first is all-day two-way go service. That is, the 401 is becoming an economic detriment to our region for people and goods and services trying to get in and out of our region. And the amount of time that employees and trucks and commerce are spending on the 401 trying to get back and forth to the GTA, this is something we have to continually advocate to the province for all-day two-way go and improve transportation within our larger region. And now more at the local level, there's a number of things I would like to mention. First of all is we need to provide a steady land supply for employment lands. We do have a good supply of employment lands, but we need to have larger parcels available, shovel-ready, for those kinds of proponents that may come into our community and on short notice be looking for a large tract of land, and that's something, sometimes the larger tracts of land are not readily available. We need to do a bit of a better job there. Also, we need to not just attract new investment. New investment is good, and it's kind of gets all the attention, but we also need to be able to support our existing businesses and industries to allow them to grow and expand within our communities so that they don't see other opportunities elsewhere that might be more favorable to them. And so things like the exemption for additions to plants, the development charge.
Thank you, Tom. We're running a little.
Is something that we need to continue. Thank you.
Speaking next is Carrie Williams.
Thank you. So when I was looking at priorities for economic development, I spoke with a lot of people at their doors and at different events, and they also want us to support the businesses that we have here because we do have such a diverse economy. So the tech sector, advanced manufacturing, traditional manufacturing, and especially small businesses. I know a lot of people my age coming out of university actually have opted to do the small business route to work for themselves and to come up with new ideas. So I feel like we should be supporting that as well, because then as they grow, that provides more employment for everyone. And I think it's also a pretty great point we're at, because we have this unique opportunity where we have all this investment that's coming in because we are now more connected through the LRT and with more investment. So we can actually maybe push a little bit harder to be more environmentally conscious and future thinking when we are attracting these types of investments and businesses to our region. So I think that by supporting the Economic Development Corporation, it's actually a really good opportunity to use that as a tool to help with the social and the environmental aspects as well in our region. And then also, obviously, with jobs and things, people will be looking to stay here and will retain our talent, and we can also try to hopefully build a bit more in the housing sector as well, so we can alleviate some of that.
Speaking next is Elizabeth Clark.
Thank you. I'm afraid it's going to start getting a bit repetitive. We are doing quite well economically. We're growing by about 10,000 people per year, and we now have more people coming into the region to work than we have going out to work in Toronto, which is quite a turnaround. We had over $1 billion in new development activity in 2017, and during my opening statements I mentioned the work of the Economic Development Corporation and the $74 million in new investment that they were successful in bringing into the community just in the first few months of their full operation. And certainly I support that, which is why I voted to extend their funding for a further 5 years earlier this year. And as Tom has said, we're working hard to get our East Side lands development ready so the businesses have a place to locate when they come. One of the things that we know, though, is that businesses, not just prospective businesses, but current businesses, are having a challenge with attracting and retaining skilled labor. And I think there's things that the region needs to do to support that. We know that workers want to see two-way all-day go, and that's something that we need to continue to push as hard as we can. We know that we need to see more passenger flights coming in and out of our airport, That's something that businesses tell us is very important, and so do the workers who come here. We want to have a community, as Ted mentioned, that is culturally rich, that is attractive, a nice place for people to live. And one thing that I don't hear mentioned often, but I'm going to add it, is childcare. We have a lot of people in the community that want to be part of the workforce, that are available, but they can't find safe and affordable childcare for their children, so they aren't participating, and that's having some economic costs for us as well. And those are all areas where the region has a role to play.
Thank you. Now, Tom Hiller.
Thank you. Growing the economy, growing a diversified economy is my top priority for self-evident reasons, but also to alleviate social concerns throughout the region. We've made our name recently in technology and historically earlier in manufacturing. I'm excited about our future. We have a number of incubators in the region, and I believe the Waterloo Regional Economic Development Corporation was one of the best developments we've made over the last few years. Coordination of economic development is critical, and the Waterloo Region Economic Development Corporation can centralize those efforts. We must continue our efforts to bring new businesses to the region, and I would like to see greater diversification, particularly in manufacturing. An example, I'm really excited about Catalyst 137 and its focus on the Internet of Things, which expands the focus beyond software. My background is largely financial services, and I see the Waterloo Regional Economic Development Corporation as very important in leading our development in that direction. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, candidates. We'll now get into the next question. We'll start again with the mayoral candidates. Another issue for municipalities across Canada is the availability of low-income housing. What do you propose to do to address the issue locally? We will begin answers with Myron Steinman.
Yes, I would ask you to go to my website and look up my vision. I talk about diverse housing, housing for people of all incomes, for all ages, for all, I'm forgetting my slogan, for all family compositions, for all abilities, with a concern for the person, plant, and animal and technology web, with a respect for those who have gone before. So I want diverse housing for all incomes and for all ages and for all abilities. Thank you. And there are many different ways to do that. We could get affordable housing just like that with legislation for 20% in all new developments. We have the ability to do that. It wouldn't cost taxpayers a cent. I got housing through Habitat for Humanity. I wouldn't have housing. I wouldn't have equity in my future through my housing if it wasn't for Habitat. Nonprofit housing has a role. And when we think of nonprofit housing, we traditionally think of housing that was built during the 90s starting by Bob Bray and then by the David Peterson government. And then it kind of fizzled out after that. That has a role to play too. The region of Waterloo has a place to get housing for people with to get housing for homes. There is a place for that. So I'm talking about diverse housing. I don't like the term affordable housing.
Thank you, Myron. We'll now have Yuri Merrick.
Thank you. I think that this question suits to my previous speech. I don't believe in handouts. I immigrated from Europe and got here already with master's degree. I studied once more at my University of Waterloo, and I've been privileged. My son is actually finishing, as I mentioned. So it goes in generations. On the other side, I believe the best social program, housing, economic development is not only to create environment and have those smart people around, but also to protect those jobs. As I started at the beginning, you need to have transportation. We heard from Mr. Jeff Lawrence that airport is about to bring a miracle. For years, we actually all subsidized airport here by $4 million, and actually it's been paid by federal government. Many companies already left the airport. 401 doesn't suit us at all the needs of the busiest highway. It doesn't keep up, especially if we are still exporting dump from Toronto to US. There was an issue about environment, ecological environment, and everybody talks about social programs or economical development company. All is financed by money. I don't know how come somebody can say it doesn't cost any taxpayers money. It costs money. The best thing for anything is simply to give environment. And as I said, if you are serious about properties, values, and social programs, well, less social programs, pardon me that, but more jobs and opportunities. To let you know that, for example, if city of Kitchener was changing Victoria Road, Victoria Street, actually they were nationalizing part of the road. They didn't pay anything to those businesses, and many of those are wiped out. I believe there is a need to go back, as I said at the beginning, and reconsider what we are doing here. And I don't believe definitely that everybody talks about idea, it will happen, shall happen. No, somebody got to do it. Somebody got to say, and there are plenty of smart people in the city, even at region, but I believe
Thank you, Yuri.
they
Sorry,
should go back to Kitchener and work for Kitchener, because the Kitchener is the largest and best still. Thank you very much.
We'll now head to Narayan Sukram.
All right, so when it comes to housing, there are a few different things, an approach we can do and need to do. And so if we do decide to open up a new scheme, obviously it is very wise to incorporate some of those affordable housing. However, as a job developer, I still believe it's related to job as well too, in some sense, because somebody has to pay for it at the end of the day. For those of you who have heard of me speak in the past, saw me at different debates and so on, you heard me talk about the simplest thing. I always believe that the biggest project usually starts out with the simplest idea. A few years ago, I turned a duplex, I turned a single home into a legal duplex by Fairway Road area. First person to ever do that. So what I'm trying to say is that we have to start out with the small pieces first. We cannot all of a sudden, overnight, we have affordable housing all over the place. It doesn't work that way. So it is wise for people to consider, and I have social work background, maybe that's the reason why I'm speaking this way, to consider maybe, turn a part of your home, basement and whatnot, into a legal space to give other, human being an opportunity. Maybe that's something to kind of, to consider if you so choose, and still have the opportunity, obviously, to screen them on all of those pieces. I still believe, though, that housing, it's not, we can easily make a livable space even free for somebody, but how do they maintain that? And then it goes way beyond with mental health issues, not having a job, all of that. And one thing I noticed here too, in Canada especially, I think the last time I saw the stats, about 50% of the people are they are divorced, and so having single people living on their own can create more problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Now to mayoral candidate Barry Verbanovic.
Thank you very much, Jeff. The whole issue of housing affordability is one that's extremely important for Canada's largest cities like Kitchener and 21 other large urban centers across Canada, and smaller communities as well. And it has been a priority for the city and the region over the last number of years. One of the things that we advocated for as mayors for many years as part of the Big City Mayors Caucus was to see a national housing strategy, and we finally saw that housing strategy come to fruition in the last couple years. And part of that strategy was actually a financial commitment as well, which will see over $11 billion in new housing being built over the next 12 years. The unfortunate part is a lot of that is back-ended, and the reality is we need it now, particularly in terms of supportive housing to help us deal with the issue of homelessness and those with mental health and addiction issues. But in the meantime, there are things that we can do and we have done. So as a city, we applied for, and we're the only city in the region to actually be part of a 13-city pilot approved by the province for development charges to build new affordable housing. That unfortunately has been put on hold by the new government and in Queen's Park, and so we're waiting to see what happens with that going forward. As a city, we've done two things. Number one, we've reduced fees for developers who are looking at building affordable housing to help incentivize it. And secondly, we've also put density bonusing in place, which allows, if you're going to do certain things, and affordable housing is one of the ones that give you the most points, you can get additional density. The last one, and one that's being talked about a lot lately, is the issue of inclusionary zoning, and I think that's what my colleague Mr. Steinman referred to. And that is an initiative that cities can undertake, but it requires a fair number of studies to do that. One way that I think in the meantime we can do things is look at city and regional lands that we might be able to make available to help facilitate affordable housing over the next number of years in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now get into the regional council candidates. Again, just to ask the question one more time so it's fresh for everyone. Another issue for municipalities across Canada is the availability of low-income housing. What do you propose to do to address the issue locally? We will begin with Ted Martin.
Thank you. When we talk about affordable housing, we often think of subsidized and supportive housing. And that's definitely an issue here. We have a growing number of homeless people, and we have addiction and mental health issues. And the region can offer incentives to for-profit and not-for-profit developers to create subsidized and supportive housing. But affordable housing goes much beyond that. We need appropriate places for everyone to call home. With the price of real estate growing in this region, it's really difficult for people, for first-time buyers, to get into the market. It's difficult for seniors who are on a fixed income to maintain their homes or to find a place downtown where they can live close to the amenities. It's difficult for families with young children to find a place that they can move into that's near parkland, that's downtown. So we have to address all these things. And it is really about inclusionary zoning. It's about thinking differently. It's about incentivizing our developers to build diverse housing options. We don't just need single-bedroom, expensive condos built along the LRT lines. We need places for seniors. We need places for students. We need places for young families to call home in downtown, in our downtown cores. And we need to help the developers see how important that is to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Michael Harris.
Yes, well, thank you. Of course, we need a diverse supply of housing stock here in the region. We all know if we've got loved ones, relatives, especially those first-time home buyers entering the marketplace here in the region, that it's very difficult, in fact, to enter the marketplace. Of course, other levels of government will have to be at the table, just like they are on building a road or a bridge on social housing. I will say there have been repeated calls in the past to levy a municipal land transfer tax at other municipalities. Of course, we know that there's already an Ontario land transfer tax. There's a duplicate one in Toronto. I would be vehemently opposed to this new tax on especially new homeowners here in our region. Of course, excess and runaway development charges are also adding to the costs of homes today. And of course, as a free market individual, a government needs to get out of the way. We saw what happened, of course, when the provincial government recently instituted rent controls. That will limit the investments, frankly, for new units of lower income housing in our marketplace, and of course, drive costs up. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Tom Galloway.
Well, thanks, Jeff. To start off with, when I think of affordable housing, I take it from the perspective that having a appropriate housing for an individual really is necessary to avoid a lot of root cause. It's a root cause. Not having it is a root cause for a lot of other issues. Poverty, problems that people have in the education system, in the healthcare system, and even in the criminal justice system. So affordable housing is a very necessary thing for a healthy community. Now, what can we do about it? Well, the senior levels of government primarily fund affordable housing programs, the province and the federal government. The local government doesn't really fund affordable housing. We provide the services via the monies that come from the senior levels of government, and we need to advocate, of course, for more of that. But there's other things that we can do other than just advocating for additional funds. We need to look at some of our own lands. As someone else said, the cost of real estate is expensive, but we do have some surplus sites, surplus lands around the community, and one that I've identified is the Charles Street Terminal that will become redundant in a couple of years, and that could make a really good affordable housing site that we can provide on an RFP basis to some providers, and they could hopefully provide affordable housing and do it on an economical basis. Inclusionary zoning has been talked about. Bonusing is important for developers, but we also need to negotiate rent geared to income units into various negotiations that we have, planning negotiations that we have with developers. So it's really a comprehensive strategy, and I think that we can make some great inroads.
Thank you. Speaking next is Carrie Williams.
So, I feel like when we talk about the housing crisis, it's kind of a trickle-down effect, because I know I have a lot of friends that are in the position where they've graduated from university, they actually are, they have very committed relationships, they've been renting, they've had to move because of jobs, and just family life in general. It's outrageous to expect that they could come up with a really large down payment, because a 3-bedroom home that would have been considered a starter home back in 1960 is now $500,000. So people my age, though, are also willing to live in different types of housing. Condos are really popular, even some smaller places like row housing, prefabs. Even a lot of people are interested in tiny homes, and I know there are limitations to us actually implementing these things for now, but I feel like we could at least start the conversation to have that diversified housing available. Things like the first-time homebuyers program is really amazing, but I feel like a lot of people aren't that engaged that are sometimes my age or younger, and so they don't actually have the information to be able to access the programs from the region, so they don't take advantage of it as often as they could. So I feel like if we actually put more information out and try to do a little bit more education on these types of programs, as well as the renovations that they're now allowing for individual houses to have a second unit so that they could provide market or below market rates for rent. So I think there's lots of things that they're doing that are really great, and if they could be expanded and then people actually know what they're doing and there's more information available, then people can take advantage of it. And that should help with a little bit of vacancy rates as well, because even just regular rentals, the vacancy rates are very low. So that's why people aren't moving from place to place like they used to. It's not the same as it was even 20 years ago. So I feel like those are all things that we can do, and everyone's already talked about bonusing, inclusionary zoning, but that would also help with the low vacancy rates as well. So.
Thank you. Speaking next is Elizabeth Clark.
Thank you. I agree with the points that have been made about needing affordable housing at all income points. I'm going to speak, though, specifically about below market and subsidized housing, because I think that's where we're seeing the most critical need. I think most people are aware that we have had just exploding numbers of homeless people in our shelters over the last year. We've seen more people sleeping rough through the region than we've ever seen before. And these are people that are going to need more assistance to be housed than some of the solutions that have been proposed today. In 2017, we did create, we did fund the creation of 100 units of below market and affordable housing, and that's not insignificant. That's millions of dollars of investment, but we do have 4,000 households on the wait list. So obviously that's not something that we're going to be able to deal with as a region alone. It's something that we're going to need to do with all 4 levels of government. With the lower level municipality, we have inclusionary zoning tools that will allow us to incent and support the development of more housing. We have our own ability to do development charge waivers and things. I sat this last term on the Waterloo Region Housing Master Plan Steering Committee. The region is it is actually the largest single provider of community housing in our region, and we have properties that are underutilized, that were duplexes and fourplexes and things built in the 70s and 80s, and we have the potential to intensify those properties, and there will be a plan coming forward to council later on this fall, and I hope we are able to move on that. One thing that hasn't been mentioned that has a lot of potential is rent subsidies. And rent subsidies are portable allowances that go to people that they can take to whatever housing they find. They can use it in housing that they're in that will help them bridge the difference between what the rent costs and what's affordable. We do have a couple of hundred rent supplements out there in the community already, and we're looking for ways to be able to build on that.
Speaking next, Tom Hiller.
Thank you, Jeff. Affordable housing. I'm very concerned about the difficult trend we're seeing. Our economic growth is very important in order to support our efforts, but we must acknowledge the changes in the higher tier government, which might make this very difficult. Regardless, providing basic shelter is non-negotiable. We do have a very compassionate community, and community services will step up. We also need to think about decentralizing affordable housing throughout the community, supported by enhanced Grand River Transit services. This would enable us to expand our capabilities. We also need to be more insistent with developers to provide affordable housing that involves trade-offs and incentives. These must continue going forward. That's the bottom line.
Thank you. And now Jeff Lorenz.
Thanks, Jeff. Earlier I was trying to convince Jeff that he'd just keep going the same way, because by the time it gets to the last person, there's not much to add. But I do want to say, I found it very interesting. Last weekend I was canvassing and knocking on doors in downtown Kitchener, and I was quite surprised by the number of duplexes and triplexes of homes in the core area. And so I think people are figuring out ways how to house people. There are a number of neighborhoods in the city of Kitchener that also allow duplexing, and most of it is good, some of it is concerning. I think when people don't take care of their properties or don't keep them up, but it really starts to deteriorate the neighborhood, and the neighbors start to get a little worried about that. And I think everybody that has pride in their homes want to make sure they maintain the property values that they have. So I attended we had a steering committee meeting a couple of days ago at the region for the Waterloo Regional Master Plans Steering Committee, and I've asked for a report to come back to council next month to give us an update. So we're hoping that in the spring we can come forward with a blueprint for change and how we deal with affordable housing in our community. But there's a number of great suggestions. I don't know if you're aware, but the region has 62 sites that they manage on their own, and they're also a clearinghouse for provincial money to nonprofits and private sectors for affordable housing. And I think we need to change how we do things. We need to start working with the private sector. We need to start thinking about how we can utilize the sites we have, that some of them were built back in the 60s or the 70s. In fact, some of the stock that we have is the old Canada Mortgage and Housing stock. The piece that's over by our new transit stop, or Ion stop on Cortland, Shelley Drive, all of that is so, we need to look at ways how we can intensify our sites, how we can utilize them a lot better. We don't need the parking that we used to have in the old days. So that's one of the main focuses is trying to utilize the things that we have. The land is the value. So once you have the land, you need to utilize it a lot better to be more effective. Thanks.
Thank you. And good news, you're only second last next time going through. Okay, we'll now move on to the next question relating to transit. What is your top priority when it comes to transit over the next 4 years, and do you support an extension of the LRT into Cambridge, otherwise known as Phase 2 of the LRT? Again, we'll begin with the mayoral candidates, and up first is Yuri Merrick.
Thank you for the privilege. again, it suits to my previous talk or speech. Transportation. There's a beginning and end of all jobs. For drugs, information, transportation, everything comes to it. I don't know what happened to region. A few weeks ago, there was, for Ward 1, a discussion. Mr. Sukram was present to it. And everybody asked about bridges. I was asking, bridges from where? When the incumbent for Ward 1 said, it got to be approved by region. That's what a few minutes ago I said about region. Everything is determined by region, and yet, who's living in Kitchener from that region? Because at region, there is everybody else outside, most likely from Kitchener. About transportation, we are having airport that hasn't been used and every year subsidized. I don't know who made it, but it's incredible that in developed world, somebody is building LRT, which is having one rail from the other across two roads or drives or streets. That means I can imagine one day, I'm traveling a lot, I can imagine myself that I'll be having a suitcase, I miss the station, I would need to go in Canada to the snowbanks and going across a street, and then somebody says, oh, actually you are wrong, you gotta go back on Victoria Station and get the rail and go somewhere else. As I said, it seems like lunacy. I don't know, that waste of money is incredible. And to let you know that 3 weeks ago I missed Roger's televised debate. I went to Italy. I went to Udine. From Udine I took OBB, Austrian Railway, that was going 160 kilometers per hour. That water was on all the way like this, not shaking. They bought obviously the track, they refurbished that, and they are going 600 kilometers within 4 hours, delay only 2 minutes. And that was actually at the Bahnhof there in Vienna. For less money than we wasted already. And there was a quite good point about austerity.
Thank you.
I think that if anybody thinks that government will pay for it, for all those plans, eventually there is no government's money, that's our money. So
Okay. Thank you.
consider
Sorry,
your
we're
pocket
out of
if you can
time.
finance it. Yes,
Yuri.
please.
Thank you. Speaking next will be Noreen Sukram, sorry.
Narayan.
Yes, I know, I screwed it up 3 times.
No
Apologies,
worries.
Narayan.
So obviously, the LRT is a go, and I think that what we need to do as citizens is to find a way to make sure that it works. That's all. And so we have to monitor that and see how it goes, and I think we have to tweak things as we go along. And so right now, we are not 100% sure as to how well it's going to go, but I think that we have to make it manageable. The second part, when it comes to the Cambridge, the second phase, obviously, the region is growing, and I think it's one way to manage growth. And for the people who support it, because obviously there are some people who don't support it. For the people who support it, I think it's a good thing, because you don't want Cambridge to always have the short end of the stick for the people who support it. I see it that way. Yes, so I do support it. But again, the idea is to really monitor and manage what we have and see how it's going. But also, if we can encourage people as well too, because it's all related to transportation. If we can encourage people to carpool and so on, those are important pieces as well too. Apart from all this LRT thing and so on, because that's going to be one way to contribute to the environment as well too, because we cannot only just rely on just the LRT. There are different ways that we can manage our way and navigate our way through. And so that's going to be my thing. So really monitor to see how well the system works. Now, there's always room for improvement, and there's nobody can go in there and fix anything. Reading on a script will not fix any sort of LRT or any kind of issue. So take lots of consultation, lots of conversation back and forth before we can move on to the next step if needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking next is Barry Verbanovic.
Thank you. And one of the things I can tell you is that as I've been talking to people over the last number of months, and in fact, even as the city's done its environic survey, transportation issues, whether we're talking about cars, pedestrians, cyclists, are probably the issue that comes up in the top 3 amongst residents in our community. And they range from everything from, the speeding that goes on in our neighborhoods and what, as a city, can we do to help slow things down, particularly in places like school zones. How can we move towards an environment of complete streets when it comes to planning, so that we're putting a focus on pedestrians and cyclists equal to that we put on vehicles going forward. And so one of the things that I think we need to look towards in the coming term is looking at a complete grid, a complete basic grid in terms of cycling, so that there's good connectivity throughout our community. But I think when we start talking about public transportation in particular, we know that the LRT is going to be up and running shortly, and that's going to be an important step for our community. Moving forward in a timely manner with Phase 2, obviously subject to funding partnerships with our provincial and federal partners, is going to be key. So we have that complete link from the north end of our region to the south end of our region. That's important from an economic development point of view, but it's also important from the perspective of managing growth in our community and preserving the hard countryside line. I think the last piece that needs to link into that is continued advocacy to make sure that with the change of government in Queen's Park, we have an ongoing commitment towards two-way all-day go between here and Toronto and everything in between, so that we can bring the investment corridor to life, but also that the province completes the high-speed rail EA and hopefully moves forward with that, because that ultimately is important if this region is going to reach its true economic potential.
Speaking next, Myron Steinman.
Yes, thank you. I would echo a lot of what Barry said. We don't have grid roads. We have circular roads. We are trying, well, first of all, yes, I have been in favor of light rail from the beginning, and I want to extend it into Cambridge. We have been pioneers, and we have made a lot of mistakes. Pioneers make mistakes. There's a lot of corrections that have to be made. I believe in planning and statistics and all that stuff, but ultimately I believe in a muddle approach to social progress, to positive progress. I believe progress happens in a muddle through approach, but statistics and all that is part of that. I don't know if you remember, there was an accident out west, and there was a hockey team that was killed. Those Greyhound buses are no longer running. We need transportation to Collingwood. We need transportation to Thunder Bay. We need this transportation. If Kitchener could become a hub, we are already competing with Toronto. One of our candidates mentioned that a lot of people are coming into this area from Toronto. But if we could have people moving out into the town, not just, well, we have to have them move to the townships. We have a lot of buses that go to Elmira. We have buses that go, one bus that goes to New Hamburg, but we also need buses that go to other parts of Southern Ontario. And Sudbury is part of Southern Ontario. I don't know if you realize that.
Thank you. We'll now begin with the regional council candidates. I'll just read the question one more time. What is your top priority when it comes to transit over the next 4 years, and do you support the LRT extension into Cambridge? This time we are going to begin answers with Michael Harris.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Clearly, the first priority will be to get the LRT or the ION up and running. Of course, we know that there's been a significant investment by our regional taxpayer, in fact, on this particular project. Well over a third, or at least a third, by regional taxpayers, unlike other municipalities that frankly got a full ride, like Hamilton and Brampton or Mississauga. I'll get to that in a minute. I think it's fair that we will have to really evaluate the economics of how the performance of our current LRT ION is doing. Of course, the original intent was to complete the link right through to Cambridge. Of course, that will be some significant expense and will be for some time before we frankly get to that discussion. It will be incumbent that we have, of course, funding partners federally and provincially that will participate perhaps in that second phase. But again, the priority will be to ensure that we've got the biggest bang for our buck with the current LRT system that's already constructed. I will say the next priority will be to ensure we've got two-way all-day go. As we heard earlier, there's a plenty amount of people coming into our region every morning. They're currently riding buses, and we need to get that link, folks off the 401 and onto the train to ensure better, reliable, advanced GO train service to and from Toronto along our high-tech corridor. And of course, we can't forget about the highway infrastructure that's important, getting Highway 7 up and running, and of course, any other links onto the 401 will be important. I will say again, it will be important that we get our fair share. We have to advocate both federally and provincially to ensure that our region is as frankly as deserving as Hamilton or Peel region, that we get our fair of transit dollars. Thank you.
Speaking next is Tom Galloway.
Well, thanks for the question, Jeff. When I think of transit, I have to automatically think of our regional growth management strategy, which has two pillars to it. The one is the countryside line, which we're not going to talk about, but the other is rapid transit. And so, as I said in my opening comments, one of the key things for me in the next term of office is the integration of conventional and rapid transit as the ION gets started shortly. We've already seen the great economic benefits, $3 billion worth of development along the line, and we have seen the number of residential units in greenfield areas out in the farmland being reduced, and the intensification being increased, and that's really what the ION is all about. And so it makes perfect sense that we want to continue this down into Cambridge. And so the environmental assessment is currently underway. The route is 90% chosen. Once the environmental assessment is completed and approved by the minister, then we can go ask for funding. And I would agree with others that on this particular occasion, we would not be going forward with phase 2 without 100% funding from the province, where that is already occurring, as others have said, in other municipalities. So we should definitely be moving it to Cambridge. It was always part of the original plan. We're going to do it in 2 phases, the north and then the south, and there are reasons to do that. And once we have the environmental assessment in the approved, then we can move forward with the funding ask, and we will be wanting 100% funding.
Thank you. Speaking next is Carrie Williams.
So the top priority for me would be making sure that all of the connections between the different systems are cohesive and they work for for everybody. Basically, we need to make it accessible. So I would like to see the system be really efficient, convenient, and affordable, because you want people to actually want to use it. You want it to be profitable. And the affordability, I think, is a big issue, because a lot of the people that could actually get the most out of using the transit system are people who don't own cars because they may be lower income, and even at that point, they probably can't afford to. So I know that we do offer subsidies, but I think expanding that program and getting more people to actually be able to access it and make their lives a little easier will be really great. I also have a firsthand perspective of this. We are a one-car family, so my husband is at work all day. He takes the car, well, a van, and during the day, I walk, bus, or bike with my children. So I sometimes see the limitations between if I'm on a bike path of how to get to a then walking path, or vice versa, if you're getting off the bus. Sometimes sidewalks end, there's people with mobility devices, it can be really difficult for them to get around, and especially winter. So I think we need to focus on some of those very little things, like making sure that the Grand River Transit stops, the LRT, all the ways that people get from their house to any form of transit they're using is actually cleared of snow, and it's accessible for anybody who has any sort of limitations. And then for phase 2, I agree with what they're saying. I think that we need to make sure that our LRT is working cohesively, all the connections are there, and that the funding is in place after we've already done all the assessments, and it is down the line. But I do think that it is a really great thing to include Cambridge, and it's very forward-thinking because the 401 corridor, as everyone knows, as they've been driving it, it's getting very clogged. So we need to be thinking to that future point where we can make the connections all the way right from maybe even Windsor to Toronto. So.
Excellent. Speaking next is Elizabeth Clark.
Thank you. If we continue growing at the rate we're growing and driving at the rate that we're driving, we're going to have to increase our roads by 35% by 2031. And that's a huge financial cost, and it's a huge environmental cost. And public transit is one of the ways that we can avoid having to do that. Our public transit system is actually doing better than it has been. We've had an increase, a steady increase in ridership since we wrapped up our LRT construction. We have over $1 million in new revenues this year from fares, and with the Conestoga College students signing off on the UPass system as they did just a week or two ago, we see that this is just going to get better. We have a GRT business plan. It's a 5-year plan that we're stretching out over 7 years, so I'm going to call it a 7-year plan. And that plan involves our really improving the functionality of our public transit system, adding 48 buses, aligning them with the LRT, and I think that we're going to need to push forward with that plan and make sure that, that it happens and that we meet all of its targets in order to achieve what we need to. I'm not going to talk about LRT as if it's a separate thing from public transit. It's not. LRT and GRT are part of the same system, and they need to interact and link properly. But absolutely, we do need to get going on phase 2. The city of Cambridge was promised that back in 2011. They're paying for it. Waterloo and Kitchener have seen a lot of benefits from development along the core, and Cambridge has the right to see that as well. We do need to nail down a route that is acceptable to the people of Cambridge and that meets our ridership and development targets, and we need to line up that funding.
Thank you. Now to Tom Hiller.
Thank you. My top priority for transit is to enhance Grand River Transit routes and services, but specifically to and from the LRT stations. We must ensure that the LRT is used, and as well that it is perceived widely as a success. This is imperative in order to gain support for Stage 2, not only municipally, but also from the provincial and federal governments who are going to be called upon for funding. That funding is critical, and we must get a better deal than what we received for Stage 1. Stage 2 is critical for the overall LRT success and its overall efficiency. My second priority is the GO train. GO train two-way all day. We need to maintain the pressure or lobby to get it done. Similarly, to ensure Highway 7 doesn't fall off the schedule. These are critical for the larger integration of the region with the province. Thirdly, we have to continue to see progressive advancement of cycling infrastructure.
Thank you. Now to Jeff Lorenz.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. So you've listened to a lot of comments already, and most of them have the province is the funder. And I think that's really important because municipalities are creatures of the province of Ontario. They make the rules and they expect us to follow them and do their bidding. And it may not be that simple, but it's true that if we don't have funding from the province to do all these things, GO train, all the other stuff we talked about, it's just never going to happen. Provincial highways are all funded by the province. So realistically, what I think we need to be doing over the next 4 years from a regional point of view is we have to make sure that the ION gets up and reaches revenue service and starts to work the way it was designed to work. We need to make sure that we have iExpress buses that feed that system, so when you get on to a bus, an iExpress bus at Stanley Park, for one fare you can take it to the ION, you can transfer up, you can go up to the boardwalk, you can catch another bus and go into New Hamburg, and it's all one fare from where. So that's what I think is going to be really important. When people figure out how this system can work for them, then I think we're going to see cars getting off the road. And don't kid yourselves, a lot of people in this room may not use it a lot, but I'm pretty sure my grandkids will, or their kids will. And that's what we built this huge system for, and I think it's important that you keep that in mind. The second thing is we've already got provincial money, 43 million, I think, to build a new transit hub, and I think it's important that we do that over the next 4 years. The third thing that I think you should understand is when we talk about Cambridge and making that connection, I do support that, but I think at the time it is going to be built, it'll be a $2 billion project. Cambridge already has a rapid bus system that runs from Fairway Road to Ainslie Station. And it may not be the most efficient, but if you recall over the last 4 years or 8 years, we've had many debates about whether our system, our ION, should be a bus system as opposed to a train system. So it's not that they don't have a system, it's just that it needs to be utilized more.
Thank you. Now to Ted Martin.
You've already heard 10 responses to this question, so I'm not sure what more I can add. I agree that getting the ION running is of primary importance. The project is about $100 million over budget and a year late. So I am concerned that we have the oversight in place to see that it is reliable and affordable and is used as a matter of choice, not merely as a means of last resort. I do agree with getting this system extended to Cambridge, but I think we have to prove that phase 1 works first, that we get the ridership here first before we extend it. And I do think that finding the right path into Cambridge is also extremely important, as well as getting the provincial money. Two-way all-day GO service from Toronto and to Toronto is extremely important for our city. We can't just keep adding more lanes to the 401. That obviously doesn't work. There's still too much traffic for it. But I also think we need to get cars off our roads, and we can do that by focusing on complete streets, by designing and maintaining roads that are safe and accessible for pedestrians, for cyclists, for users of transit, for users of horses and buggies, and for users of cars. We have to start really thinking about it, being intentional in our design of our subdivisions, of our streets, of our major roads, to make sure that we are creating roads not just for cars, but for people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, candidates. After 3 questions, we've consumed an hour and a half of time, so this will very certainly be our last question of the afternoon. And just a reminder again that although most candidates are doing a very good job, 2-minute time limit on responses. The final question: how should Regional Council address concerns around the legalization of cannabis? In the new year, municipalities will have the option to opt in or opt out of physical stores. Would you opt in or would you opt out? Again, we'll begin with the mayoral candidates and Narayan Sukram.
Well, first I should let out some secret here. I've never used any sort of drugs in my life before. That's the one thing I want to mention here. But to answer your question, I will opt out. And because for a few different reasons. One, I think that we have too many other things to control, in our city here, in our region. And so having something else here to deal with will be another thing we have to worry about. So for me, I'm not 100% convinced that businesses will manage things accordingly. And I think it can easily slip through the cracks and get into the hands of underage and all of these types of pieces. So I definitely will opt out. Because one, like as I mentioned, the businesses, I need to have more confidence in the businesses first to make sure that people will follow policy and so on, because in these days nobody follow policy and things of that kind. But also, as I mentioned earlier as well, we have other important pieces to worry about, and I think this will just really give us too much to really kind of worry about. So definitely I will opt out. To really focus my energy, because this is the last question, I'm trying to use up every second. So I basically would like to focus my energy, my drive on all of the other important pieces. Keep in mind we have like mental health to worry about, homelessness, all of those types of people, meaningful jobs, being able to advocate and so on with government at all levels. So definitely opt out to focus so that we can move this city forward. Thank you.
Speaking next, Barry Verbanovic.
Thanks very much, Jeff. And since this is the last question, I do want to just take this opportunity to thank the Chamber and yourself for facilitating this debate, and also all in the audience who came out to hear the different perspectives, both from a mayoral and a Kitchener Regional Council perspective. This is a complicated issue because it's one that is probably the biggest shift in public policy in all of our lifetimes, quite frankly, in terms of a major change that we're seeing. I personally would have preferred to see the province continue down the path with the legalization happening of seeing the stores being operated in a similar manner as the LCBOs, because we know that with those LCBO stores, they've got a good track record in terms of managing issues and problems and so on, and working with municipalities. However, the reality is we know that the province has taken a different turn with this issue, and so we need to work with them. And we need to work amongst ourselves in this region to take a common approach, because the reality is one municipality in this region can say yes or no and just cross Union Street potentially and have a different answer on the other side of Union Street and be able to pick, to go pick up products. So I think we need a common response to this, even though it is the lower tiers that are dealing with it. I am disappointed that the province would not give us more of a say on the location issue in the legislation that is waiting ratification right now. Unfortunately, that's not the route they went, but it's something that we're going to continue to advocate for through the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and so on. Finally, I don't think the answer is to necessarily say we're going to opt out, because that may mean losing out on enforcement dollars. That's not clear yet, and it would be unfortunate to see that happen and have the problems, because the mail order system and everything is going to operate, but we need to make sure we get our share of the dollars so that we can deal with any of the enforcement and public health issues that go along with it. Thank you very much.
Speaking next, Myron Steinman.
I didn't realize opting out was an option. I think it's the Treasurer of Ontario, at least he was the interim leader of the PCs, say that it's the end of an era. It's the end of an era with the legalization of cannabis. In my work as a community mental health worker, I was trained in what is called harm reduction. Harm reduction recognizes that people cannot go off cold turkey. We cannot legally operate safe injection sites. I have gone on record saying we should have a citizen participation process now for locations for zoning safe injection sites. I have been canvassed heavily on this, and I swung and thought maybe we should have portable sites, but I swung back to saying we should have fixed sites. And one location that I thought of is the former Bronze Street bicycle store. It used to be, after that it was a Bible Society. That is where people with a lot of needles are found around there. That is where I have been canvassed. What neighborhood are you going to sacrifice by having a low injection site? And I asked, do you object to St. John's Kitchen? And they said no, even though it was in that person's neighborhood. There's a lot of people that have drug issues that go to St. John's Kitchen. I guess I can't elaborate anymore.
Okay, thanks, Myron. Now wait for Yuri to come back. If you didn't notice what happened, a bird somehow flew in here and injured itself. So thank you, Yuri, for taking the bird outside. Anything goes, I guess, in a municipal debate. So yeah, whenever you're prepared and ready to go.
So, as you can see, marijuana is one issue and rescue life, oh, that's other. I didn't vote for liberals lately. Somewhat I don't believe that is right to have legalization of marijuana as any drug. On the other side, as everybody has got right to do anything in bedroom, yes, I was for the criminalization of marijuana, but on the other side, it seems to me like entire nation is taking opportunity as, yeah, we've got something special. As I said, I'm not happy about having this madness that suddenly we can do something anybody else on planet cannot, because obviously everybody's smoking. But if we are taking this approach as this is the only thing that we can achieve, I think that is a sad day. As I said, people are saying that what should be done. Well, I'd say what I will do and what will be done if elected. And that is, I'm used to do when I get into something. First, I finance this campaign myself. I am not in anybody's pocket. Secondly, I'm devoted and I'm ready to 4 years or even 8 years, but also I'm for limited any political candidacy, saying that or position. So if elected, first time what I'll do is basically ask council and everybody, not only to resolve the issue with region in cooperation with government, but also to immediately vote for not only referendum, but then to change not only the limit for 4 years, but also for each municipality and every to determine their own destiny. If I'm supposed to pay taxes and they are going up, and everybody is saying these funds, that will be financed, indeed they are asking you and we should pay for it. And indeed, we've got no say about it. Because about highways, railway, airports, etc., you've got no say about it. And that's why, if elected, I'll do my best, because I'm having a vested interest, to change everything, that everything and each penny and dollar will be, and everybody who's spending the money would be accountable. And in this regard, we are actually blessed to have today Duckford as the Premier of Ontario. And in that regard, hopefully in the future, if you've chosen me as a mayor, next mayor anywhere, definitely should be better. Otherwise, you are having status quo, and everybody will be talking just as it is. Hopefully, somebody will change it.
Apologies.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now have a response from our regional council candidates. We'll begin. I'll just read the question once again. How should regional council address concerns around the legalization of cannabis? Do you support opting in or opting out of physical stores when that choice is made available? And this time we will begin with Tom Galloway.
Well, thanks, Jeff. And just to be clear, so the audience knows, this will be a decision made at the city level. The region will not have a decision to make in opting in or opting out. So the city of Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, and the townships will make that decision. That's not to say I don't have an opinion on it. I just won't have to exercise that opinion at council. So I do agree that the municipality should opt in. To not opt in is really saying to organized crime, come on in and do what you always do and sell the stuff on the street corner. Who knows what's in it and what other things could happen from individuals who might use their particular product. It's legal, whether you like it or not. That's not what we're here to discuss. It's legal, so people are going to use it, and if it's not sold in a proper facility with proper quality control kinds of measures that are going to be put into place, then you're just asking for organized crime to do what they've been doing for a long time. So I think from that point of view, we ought to, the city ought to opt in. What we are concerned about somewhat at the regional level, however, is the enforcement side. Police is a regional responsibility, and there are going to be costs. I chair the Police Services Board. I know what the costs are going to be. The training costs already that we've incurred for officers to be able to detect it and measure it. And then the enforcement side in terms of prosecution and the cost. So we want to opt in order, as Barry said, to benefit from some of the income. And then, of course, there are some public health issues, which, of course, the region is also responsible for that we need to take into account.
Thank you. Next is Carrie Williams.
I also agree that since we wouldn't be voting on it, we would need to look at what the city has done and then focus on the bylaws and the policing and enforcement of the rules, like making sure that if it is opted in, that they're following all of the stringent guidelines. I also personally feel like it would cut down on other costs if we did opt in, because you'd be getting those revenue streams and then you'd also be employing people, and it's a lot safer. The rules are very, very strict. A couple people have explained them to me because I was curious. And it's to the flake that falls on the floor that people are responsible for bagging, clearing up, keeping away. They have to measure it. So there's also the paper trail of the actual bylaws and the things that they need to register. All of those specifications are accounted for, whereas out on the street, none of those things exist. So I think that if we focus on those things, make sure that the policing is in place, enforcement, and everyone's following the rules, then it could work.
Now to Elizabeth Clark.
I think that Tom and Carrie have done a good job of explaining that our role as a region will be in the area of policing and bylaw and public health. The province has already determined that it's going to be treated as if it were tobacco under the Smoke-Free Ontario Act, so our bylaw people are already very familiar with enforcing that, and they will continue to do that. They will have to ramp up, of course, and there will be more costs, which is why I think that Barry's comment about opting in brings money with it, so I think that's important. I think I heard yesterday that there were 100 hits per minute on the online website to order it, so opting out doesn't mean that we're not going to have it here by any means.
Now to Tom Hiller.
I too would support an opt-in if we're talking personal feelings. I believe not doing so would be sticking our head in the sand, so to speak, on this issue. That said, I think we have to look to the province for further guidance. And soon, like Barry, I would have preferred that government-owned storefronts be used instead, but with the cards dealt, we will have to manage licenses and sites similarly to the way we have managed those for alcohol. That means restricting sites to certain areas and ensuring operators have been screened. This is what we're anticipating from the province in any case. I hope that we will also consider density measures to dissuade developing bar zones in various municipalities. But by opting in, what we're really doing is opening it up to market forces, which means that they will live and die by their own business. That's it.
Thank you. Now to Jeff Lorenz.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. I just want to, because I'm sure there's not going to be another question, just thank all of you for coming out today. It's such a beautiful day, and this is a wonderful facility in our historic Victoria Park, and it's just, it's pretty cool that everybody would come and still stay here. So I'm not so sure if I would have. So we understand where the regional perspective is, and I think the history of maybe a regional council and local councils, not quite getting along the way people would think they should is probably true. But I can tell you there's a great spirit of cooperation between local municipalities and regional staff. And the CAOs meet on a regular basis. So I agree with Barry. I think at the end of the day, we have to have some kind of a united front on how we're going to deal with this issue. I was part of the decision to ban smoking. We were the first city, the first region, I guess, but really the first municipality in Ontario. And I can tell you, I was confronted in restaurants. Restaurant owners, one guy asked me to leave because it was going to destroy his business. That guy is still in business today. Two others, they're all, really everybody that gave me a hard time are all in business today. So, to see a grown man cry because his business is going to be destroyed because his staff can't work in a smoke environment anymore, I could never figure that out. Anyway, it worked out quite well, and I think it's one of the things that people seem to forget when you walk into a place and you don't see anybody lighting up, having a cigarette after they had their meal and you just starting yours. But you know, when we were out in Vancouver, it still went on 3 or 4 years ago that they didn't have smoking bylaws out there. So I think we're really progressive on that. So this is going to be an issue that our smoking police will enforce from a regional perspective.
Thank you. Next is Ted Martin.
Thank you, and I want to take this opportunity to thank the Chamber for having us here, to thank Jeff for keeping us all in line, and to thank all of you for coming out. Interestingly, I got a call from a couple of high school students this morning asking me this very question. I took the opportunity to remind them that it was still illegal for them. I think there is still a lot of confusion. The province hasn't yet completely made clear how the money is tied to whether we opt in or opt out. So I think it may be a little early to make that decision now, or to be definite about what decision we should make. My understanding is that you can opt in at any time, but if you want to opt out, you have to do it by January. So I would think that we would want to wait to opt in until we have clear understanding of what the province intends for these physical stores and what our role will be in it. As the others have said, legal marijuana is here, and as a region, our role is enforcement, and that's what we'll have to concentrate on. Thank you.
Now to Michael Harris.
Well, thank you, and again, I'd like to thank the Chamber, Ian, Art, and your team for putting on this, lively discussion about our regional issues as we head into Monday's election. I want to thank Jeff, obviously, for being a host as well. Clearly, legalization is now upon us, and it will be a City of Kitchener, in our case's decision on whether they'll be a willing host or not. I would personally support their call to be such a host. We know that it is here, it's a reality, and it's now how we go about dealing with the implications of legalization that will be, I think, more of a regional responsibility. As transportation critic, I long called for the province to have a reliable testing system, even federally, a reliable testing system that will ensure those that are on our highways are not under the influence, that we can properly detect impairment. There has been an additional cost incurred by the region, of course, to train officers, frontline officers, from the detection of impairment. I know they have to travel to the United States to do so. And so the pressure being applied both federally and provincially to ensure that we've got an actual device that can detect impairment, I think will be paramount, as well as any other public health and bylaw enforcement will be things that we'll need to work through as we go forward under this new legalization era. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for joining us here this afternoon. If there's any other questions, I'm sure many of us will be hanging around later for those individual one-on-ones. And if I can direct your attention to votemichaelharris.ca, if there's any other questions for me specifically, I welcome you to do so. Thanks again, and have a great afternoon.
Okay, thank you. That does it for the evening, for the afternoon. Once again, thank you to all the candidates for being available. Thank you for putting your name on the ballot. It's a tough thing to do, and I think 12 of you, plus the outstanding people, did that. So we thank you for doing that. Once again, thanks to the Chamber for taking the time to put this forum and the other two on. On behalf of the Chamber, I want to again thank the candidates, thank everyone for showing up today, thank the City of Cambridge, well, I'll thank them too, but why not? Thank Waterloo, thank Woolwich, but Kitchener specifically tonight, and the Victoria Park Pavilion for hosting, and of course everyone in attendance once again. If you are a resident of Waterloo Region, the municipal election date is October 22nd. It is rapidly approaching, so please ensure you're aware of your voting location. The Chamber hopes this forum provided some relevant perspectives on issues of your concern. Once again, thank you everyone for taking the time to show up.